Howdy, howdy, and good Sunday morning. And I'm doing a little bread baking today, so I thought I'd do some information on it, give you some information on some sourdough and what I do and how I go about it. And I'll give you a little history. I started this baking bread many years ago, and I did it religiously and sourdough. And then I kind of got out of it. I was on a ranch then, and then took other jobs and just didn't have the time to follow through. It's a little bit time consuming, but it's kind of like a hobby in a way. You know, you perfect it the way you want to. You get creative, do what you want to do. So I decided today's the day. I mean, I've been doing this, and I do it maybe like every week or so, every 10 days. I bake a couple of loaves of bread, and then I have it for a while. This is down to this little piece of sourdough, and it's very good. So when I got started into it this year, I made a batch of starter, and I'll recommend this book right here. I bought this off of eBay. I had it for a long time ago, and I gave it away, and then I went recently and bought it for under 10 bucks off of eBay. And there's a part in here, Getting Started with Starter, so go ahead and read that if you're inclined, and then make your starter. Well, the first two batches of starter I made, I left out, I guess, a little too long, and they both got moldy on me, and I had to throw them out. So finally I decided, well, I wasn't going to let it ferment very long, and I would let it ferment over a period of time whenever I used it, but I didn't leave it out for a week. I left it out, let it perk and get active, and then I put it in the fridge, and that's where I store it. So the first thing I did this morning was get the starter out, and I warm it up, and it'll get active, and then we'll go from there. Then I get the house warm. It's got to rise later on. I usually keep my house pretty cold, and then I'm going to cook it outside in my Dutch ovens, so I prep my Dutch ovens, and that's where I'm at right now. So I keep my starter in this crock, and I've got a wooden lid for it that I'm making, but right now I just use this plate. You don't want to you can store your starter in anything that's like a crock or maybe like a glass, but don't store it in anything metal. It'll take on the taste of the metal, even stainless. So what I do, I just put it in my sink here, and with some hot water, I run it out of the tap, and I stir it up. It separates out, the water and flour separate after a while, and you can see the crust around the edge above the starter. Don't worry about that. It's not moldy. It's fine. It's just dried flour and water. And then you can see it's kind of like looking a little fluffy. So it's active, and you see the bubbles. So the yeast in there, the natural yeast, is working. And what I have to do is add to it, and then I'll let that start working, and then I'll prep my dry ingredients after that, and then form it into loaves, and then let it rise for quite a while. At some point I'll start a fire outside and cook it with coals from that fire. So this is the recipe that I use, the sheepherder bread tube. I guess that says pumpernickel on the page, but what I've got to modify that recipe as I go, and one reason I'm sure is because I use heavy wheat Montana whole wheat flour, and that's what I got going here. And it calls for a sifter. Well, I don't own a sifter, so what I do is I got this kind of an old-fashioned sifter here, and I just mix the dry ingredients, and I work it in with a knife, a butter knife or whatever. And it calls for a teaspoon of salt, and I'm a little generous with that. It's just a touch more. And then it calls for 2 tablespoons of sugar. I only put 1 tablespoon in. It's raw sugar, turbinado or something like that. It's kind of coarse. But what I add, then it calls for 2 tablespoons of shortening, which I don't add. I add butter, and I melt it. And then I take this spoon here and I dip it into here, which is honey, and I get 2 big old globs of that honey out, and I put in here with that butter. Man, does that taste good. So what I'm going to do is go ahead, I wanted to show you this. I went ahead, and my starter I think has been a little on the thick side, so this time I put in 1.5 cups of warm water and 1 cup of flour. And you can see there's lumps in there and stuff. You don't worry about that. Just mix it up. Don't beat this stuff to death. And when you get it in the bowl and knead it around, all that stuff, you're never going to see those lumps. They're going to disappear. Now after this is about the 5th or 6th time I've done this since it turned winter, and this stuff has fermented, and it has just an ungodly great smell. I mean, it has a sweet sour type of a smell, but man, it's just going to get nothing but better, as time goes by. And I hope this, and like when I made it on the ranch, I mean, that starter stayed good all summer long, and I would do it more in the fall and winter and spring, and I didn't want to heat my house up but in the summertime, but it just stays good as long as it's in the fridge, and it'll keep that scent, it'll keep that taste. And this big board here is what I'm going to turn it out on and knead it. The kneading part is very important, but we'll get to that later. Well, you can see this is really active, and I've let it set since I put the flour and water in for maybe 45 minutes, and I'm saying it's ready. And I need to add 1.5 cups. I still have that, and it's still warm. So we'll see where we're at. And got a little bit of cream there. The last few times I've done this, it seems like the whole thing has come out a little dry, and I've had to add moisture. So you just dip it in there. This is a 1/2 cup. So I might add three, and we'll see how it goes. I might add a little bit of this cream if it's a little bit dry. I might add a little more starter. I'm not going to get every drop. I'll get it eventually when I have 2 hands here. So you just add it to start working the flour in. This looks like it's going to be pretty good. I don't think it's going to be too dry. So I'm going to put this camera down, and I'm going to use my hands.
Well, I realized I'd made a mistake, and I hadn't added all the flour, and that's why it was plenty moist compared to the last few times I've made it. So I went ahead, in order to get the quantity I wanted, I had to add more flour. So I did, added the correct amount. I did not sift it, I just dumped it in. And then I added another half cup of starter. So that was a total of 2 cups. And then took a little bit of half and half and heated it up just a touch so it's warm. And that way, if the bread gets a little dry on the outside, or the dough rather, I can just stick my fingers in there and wipe it down. Basically, bread's kind of like clay in a way. When it's the proper consistency, or the dough's like clay, it does not stick to the board. And if it does, I just roll it in a little bit of flour. And kneading it, I just work it down with the back heel, like the heel of my hands, and just keep turning it. And I knead it quite a bit. And you can see that little bit of flour I just put on there. It goes away. Now this is doing pretty good. It's sticking to my hands, but it doesn't like come apart. It's damp to the touch, but it's not like wet, and it's not like sticky like glue or something. So I'm going to keep this up for a few more minutes here. We'll go from there. So I've got it as far as I'm going to take it with kneading. And I've got 2 different Dutch ovens I'm going to cook in, and one's bigger than the other. So all I'm going to do is take this and do like a 1/3, 2/3. Beautiful. Absolutely. And then I'm just going to take it and form it into a round loaf. I'm not going to do anything fancy with the top. No crisscrosses or stuff. And you can see I have out of 4 cups of flour, that's what I got left, you know, and that's not bad. Okay. Dark over here. But all I'm doing is putting it in the middle, that Dutch oven. Here's the other one. You can see there's a little coconut oil on the bottom. I season it with a little heavier oil, canola, and then I wipe it down really, really well, and then just put a little bit of coconut oil in there. And now what I'm going to do is cover them, and I'm going to let it rise for pretty much just leave it for maybe 2 hours or 3 hours, something like that, and then we'll go from there. Well, I've got the wood range going out back, so I've got a nice fire going in it. And it's hot out here. So I brought the sourdough, the Dutch ovens out, and I hung them up. This is where they reside when they're not in use. So, and I covered them with some damp towels, keep a little moisture in them, and we'll check them after a while. Hopefully in a couple hours they'll have risen up and or whatever, and they'll be ready to go. Well, I'll tell you what I did, and I'll tell you what I'm going to do, and then I'll tell you what I haven't done yet. So, but I was hungry, so I hung that stuff up, that sourdough up, and kept the fire going, and I decided to make some pancakes. So I get this mix out, and I use this stuff called Kodiak cakes. It's really good. It's like a whole wheat type of thing. And so I thought, well, you know, there's extra flour in this bowl that I had from the sourdough. So I scraped it a little bit and I got a bunch of flour out of there. Then I added just a little bit of that Kodiak cake stuff. And then I put some grated up apple in there and some cinnamon. And man, I'm telling you, those things rose up like about an inch. They were just light and fluffy beyond belief. And they made two just huge pancakes. I mean, huge for me, and filled me up. And I had some good home-cured bacon. And so that worked out really well. Good breakfast, I'm full. And in the meantime, I'd come back out here, and this place was like 150 degrees. Well, maybe I'm exaggerating just a touch. But anyways, there's an old thermometer in that stove, and this is only the third time I've burned that stove. And I thought, well, I just assumed it never worked. Well, I thought to myself, God, if it's this hot in here, and I put my hand over that oven, over the top of that range there, and I thought, man, oh man, I wonder what that oven. I looked down and I go, well, hell, thermometer's on like 300 degrees. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I think the recipe says cook it at like 350 or 375, you know. So I'm thinking, there's one way or another, I'm going to be able to cook that bread in that range today. And that's what I'm going to try and do. It's not, the fire died down a little bit, which is fine. It doesn't need to be 100 degrees out here. And so when I get going, after I check, what I haven't done is check that bread. And I don't know how long it's been. I put it up there at 10, and I wanted to give it at least an hour. And I would assume it won't be fluffed up enough in an hour, but on the other hand, as warm as it is in here, it could be. And I'm thinking that I can get this thing, that stuff baked one way or another on this wood range today without having to make a fire out front. And if that's the case, that's going to be damn cool. I'm going to be really happy. I think I can fit both those Dutch ovens in there at once. And if not, I can kind of alternate them, you know. I can put one on top and get the bottom of the Dutch oven hot. I mean, the Dutch oven is like its own little entity. I mean, once it gets hot, it just bakes all the way around. And you can bake from the bottom, you can bake from the top, or cook or bake, whatever you want to call it. So it is good to bake from both, but I can also drag some coals out of that thing and put on the top. And I can get that bottom like I like it, and I can get that top of that bread like I like it. So that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to try. Sourdough creativity. Well, the bread really hasn't risen like I thought it would. It's come up quite a bit, but not near enough. I'd like to see it a little higher, but I'm going to go ahead and try this anyways. It's like 1 o'clock, a little after maybe. And the small Dutch oven's up there. It's the same. So we're going to give her a try though in this oven. I don't know if that's accurate, you know, but it was higher than that. It was right on that 300 a little bit ago. the fire died down, but got the damper part way closed, and the flue is almost all the way closed. So the heat's going around the oven before the flame, and the heat going around the oven before it exits out the stovepipe. And I brought the lids out, warmed them up, and I'm going to put the big Dutch oven in, and then we'll see what happens. So 45 minutes, that's how the bread looks. I'm guessing she's done, but I'm going to do a little something. I've kept the fire going pretty good. It shows it's just under 300, and obviously this could be way wrong. I mean, I didn't put a temp gun on it, but we'll see. We're going to get ready and put the other little one in. So that's the second loaf. And made another mistake. I should not have had the lid on if I was cooking in the oven. That's probably why the top is pale. But we're going to give it a few more minutes. I don't know if and I'm going to put some coals on top. So those coals are hot. They're real hot. And it'll brown that top, I'm pretty sure. And being right over the back end there, that flame, that'll heat that bottom of that Dutch oven up, and it'll brown the bottom. And you can see I did get that oven over 300. Just curious as to how close that is, but it's pretty cool anyways. So we'll give that a few more minutes. And I did the same exact thing. There's the lid for the other one. The bread's in the house. We'll go show you that. But I should have left that lid off on both of them. So it's kind of flat, but you got nice and golden brown on top. You're perfect on the bottom. And I don't like to cut it right away. It seems like you squash it. There ain't gonna be nothing wrong with this bread. That is very good. It's sweet. I like crust, so it's got plenty of crust. It'll go good as toast. That's usually what I use it for. And then for breakfast, or like if I have stew or something like that, I'll toast it up. I'll have it with supper. I think I'll have another piece. Perfect. Maybe the loaf isn't, you know, nice and stand-up-y like it should be, but I guess it all goes down the hatch. It's kind of like, I don't know, it's like a fresh drink of water, huh? It's perfect when it's just warm and butter, not margarine. You can taste the honey. You know what I was going to do, and I forgot too. I saved a little bit of coffee, and I don't know what I did with it. Oh, it's up there. I was going to dump that in there.
But there's a reason it's not rising real good. And I don't know. The first time I did it this year, man, it really went to town. But I may have used yeast too. Maybe I need to put a little yeast in it. I'll try that next time. Well, if you're in the sourdough cooking, if you're in the Dutch oven cooking, I hope this helped.